Hello.
I hadn't planned on staying over. Not really. It was supposed to be a quick visit, a stop on the way back from a summer road trip before I headed home. But when Tom texted that he and his girlfriend were heading out of town for the weekend, he offered his old room like it was nothing. Still made up the same, he said. My mom won't mind. She'll be happy to see you. And that was true. I'd known his mom, Molly, for years, since elementary school. Their house was like a second home growing up. It was where we spent summers sneaking sodas from the garage fridge, where we'd play video games until sunrise, and where I'd occasionally fall asleep on the couch after movie nights. I didn't even hesitate before texting back, "Sure, I'll swing by tomorrow." When I pulled up to the house, everything looked the same but smaller. The hedges were trimmed neater. The driveway had fresh lines painted. The porch light was already on, even though the sun hadn't set completely yet. Molly opened the door before I even knocked. "Look at you," she said, eyebrows lifting as she took me in. "I barely recognized you with that jawline and scruff." I laughed, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. "Hi, Mrs. Turner." She rolled her eyes. "Please, it's Molly. You're not 12 anymore." She pulled me into a quick hug that lingered just a second longer than expected. She still smelled like vanilla and some kind of citrus lotion. Comforting, familiar, but something else too. Something I couldn't quite name. Inside, everything was just as I remembered. The creaky wooden floor near the hallway, the ceramic bowl on the kitchen counter that never had fruit, just random keys and receipts, and the couch that practically swallowed you whole if you sat in the corner. "You hungry?" she asked as I dropped my duffel by the stairs. "I could eat," I said. We ate grilled cheese and tomato soup like it was a throwback to the sleepovers we used to have. She sat across from me at the kitchen island, her elbows on the counter, a glass of white wine resting beside her. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and she wore a simple long-sleeve shirt and soft-looking jeans, barefoot like always. But I was noticing things now I hadn't before. The way she tilted her head when she listened, how her fingers moved as she spoke, expressive but relaxed. Her laugh, it was softer than I remembered, like it came from somewhere deeper. We talked about Tom, about my last semester at school, about how much the neighborhood had changed. "You're different," she said at one point, sipping her wine. "Taller, sure, but it's more than that." I shrugged, trying to brush it off. "College does that, I guess." "No," she said, her voice quieter now. "It's not just college. It's how you carry yourself." I didn't know how to respond, so I just smiled and said, "Thanks," even though it wasn't really a compliment I knew how to take. After dinner, she showed me to Tom's old room. It hadn't changed much. Posters still on the walls, the same bookshelf full of old games and comics. But the bedspread was new, and the room smelled faintly of lavender. "If you need anything, I'm just down the hall," she said, pausing at the doorway. "I remember," I replied with a grin. She smiled, then added, "Good night, sweetheart." The word caught me off guard, not because it was strange, but because it felt too natural. When she closed the door, I stood in the middle of the room for a moment, feeling like the space had shifted somehow, like I wasn't quite the same boy who used to sleep here, and she wasn't quite the same woman who used to call us down for pancakes on Sunday mornings. Later that night, I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, too quiet. I could hear the soft hum of the fridge down the hall, the occasional creak of the settling floorboards. And then I heard her voice, soft, low. She was on the phone with someone, maybe in her room or the kitchen. I couldn't make out the words, just the rhythm of it, the quiet way she laughed every now and then. And for some reason, it made me feel more alone than I expected. I rolled over, pulling the covers higher. But even with my eyes closed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't just smaller than I remembered. It was more alive, and that I was starting to notice things I was never supposed to. I woke up to the smell of coffee. It drifted under the door, warm and sharp, mixed with something buttery, toast maybe or pancakes. For a moment, I let myself stay still, eyes half closed, listening to the soft clatter of dishes and the faint hum of a morning playlist coming from the kitchen. It was almost exactly how it used to be, except the quiet now felt different, more intentional, more intimate. When I stepped into the hallway, the light was already pouring through the living room windows. Molly stood at the stove, barefoot again, wearing an oversized navy sweater that just brushed the tops of her thighs. Her hair was damp, probably fresh from a shower, and she was moving with the same effortless rhythm I remembered from childhood. Only now I saw it differently. She didn't hear me right away, and I didn't speak. I watched for a moment. The way she stirred something in a pot, the curve of her shoulders under the fabric, the way she tilted her head to the music as if the morning belonged only to her. Then she glanced over. "Oh, hey," she said, smile curling easily. "I didn't hear you get up." "I just did," I replied, rubbing the back of my neck. "Smells good in here." "French toast," she said, turning back to the stove. "And coffee, obviously. You still take it black." I blinked. "You remember that?" She chuckled. "I remember more than you think." She poured me a mug without waiting for an answer and handed it over with both hands. Our fingers brushed. Nothing dramatic, just warm skin on skin for a beat too long. She didn't flinch, and neither did I. I sat at the kitchen island while she plated the toast. The room was filled with morning sun and the quiet confidence of a woman who knew exactly how she moved through space. I noticed the way her sweater shifted on her body as she reached up to grab the syrup, the bare line of her thigh as she turned toward me. She wasn't trying to be anything. That's what made it worse. Or better. "You sleep okay?" she asked, sitting across from me. "Yeah. It's weird being back here, though. Everything looks smaller." She smiled faintly. "You just got bigger." I laughed. "Guess so." Her eyes lingered on me longer than expected. "Not in a motherly way. Not exactly." "I wasn't sure I'd even recognize you," she said, voice softer now. "You've changed so much." I tried to shrug it off again, but something in her expression held me there. Then she said it. "You've grown up so fast." The words hit deeper than they should have. Maybe it was her tone. Maybe it was the pause that followed, or the way she looked down at her mug like she'd said something she wasn't supposed to. I didn't know what to say. "Yeah," I finally offered. "I guess we both have." That made her smile again, but this time it was different. Smaller, more thoughtful. We ate quietly for a while. She asked about my classes, what I wanted to do after graduation. I asked about her job, her garden, whether she still painted in the evenings like she used to. She did, apparently, said it helped her think. After breakfast, she asked if I could help her bring down some boxes from the hallway closet. "Just old seasonal stuff," she said. "I keep meaning to sort it, but never do." I followed her into the hallway. She pulled open the narrow closet and stood back as I reached up to grab a plastic bin from the top shelf. It wasn't heavy, just awkward. As I lowered it, I lost my balance slightly, and her hands came up instinctively, one catching the side of the box, the other landing on my chest. "Careful," she said. Her palm lingered. We were close now, close enough to feel the warmth of her body, the scent of her shampoo, the subtle catch in her breath. "Thanks," I said, not moving. She looked up at me, her hand still on my chest. And then, just as suddenly, she stepped back. "I'll clear the guest room later," she said casually, turning toward the living room. "Tom mentioned it's been getting stuffy in there." And just like that, the moment passed. But the tension didn't. I carried the box to the couch and set it down gently, my hands still buzzing from the weight of her touch. She sat nearby, legs curled beneath her, flipping open the lid and sifting through the contents. Old blankets, framed photos, a candle that had melted crooked. "I don't even know why I kept half this stuff," she muttered. I sat beside her. Not too close, not too far. She picked up a picture frame and handed it to me. It was a photo of the three of us. Tom, her, and me. Sitting on the porch steps, popsicles in hand, all sunburnt and squinting at the camera. I must have been 12. "You were always so quiet," she said. I smiled. "I guess that hasn't changed much." "No," she said, "but something else has." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Her fingers brushed mine again when she reached for another photo. This time I didn't pull away. She didn't either. The rest of the day passed in a kind of haze. We didn't talk about what happened in the hallway. Not out loud. But it hovered between us. An unspoken shift, like a new gravity pulling just beneath the surface. We spent the afternoon going through the rest of the boxes, sorting what to keep, what to toss. At some point she found an old scarf she said used to be her favorite, then laughed at how hideous it looked now. I laughed too, but I wasn't really thinking about the scarf. By the time the sun began to fade behind the trees, the house had grown quiet again. She poured herself another glass of wine and offered one to me. I hesitated. "I won't tell Tom," she said with a wink. I took the glass. We ended up in the living room on opposite ends of the couch. The overhead lights were off, just a small lamp glowing in the corner and the fading golden spill of the sunset through the blinds. She had a blanket over her lap and a playlist humming low through her phone speakers. Something slow and jazz-like, the kind of music that didn't demand attention but settled into the background like it belonged there. "This was my favorite part of the house," she said, cradling her wine. "Even before we remodeled. There's just something about this time of day here. It's peaceful," I said. She turned to me. "It wasn't always." I looked at her, waiting. She didn't explain right away, just took another sip, then set her glass down on the side table and leaned back, tucking her hair behind one ear. "I used to sit here after Tom went to bed," she said, "when his dad and I were fighting, or when I just needed to breathe. It always felt like the one place in the house where I could just be. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything." Her eyes found mine. "You're easy to talk to. You always have been." I smiled, unsure. "I don't think I ever said much back then." "You didn't have to," she said. "Even as a kid, you had this stillness about you, like you were always watching but not judging. It made people feel safe." "Is that how I make you feel now?" I asked before I could stop myself. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, "Not exactly." I swallowed. My mouth suddenly dry despite the wine. "How then?" She shifted, leaning slightly toward me. Not enough to close the distance, but enough to feel the change in energy. "You still have that quiet," she said. "But there's something else now." Her fingers grazed the top of my hand where it rested on my knee. just a brush. But she didn't move away. There's something different in your eyes, she added. Like, you see things you didn't used to. I turned my hand slowly, palm up. She watched me. Then her fingers slipped into mine. Lightly, deliberately, as if testing something she already knew the answer to. You feel it too, don't you? She asked, barely above a whisper. I nodded. The silence between us deepened. Not awkward, not hesitant, but thick with everything we weren't saying. Her hand in mine was small and warm and still. We didn't look away from each other. I don't know what to do with this, she said. We don't have to do anything, I replied. But it's there, she said. Isn't it? Yes. She let go of my hand gently, as if reluctant, then stood, picking up her empty glass and walking toward the kitchen. I watched her silhouette move through the dim light. She didn't look back. I sat there for a long time, the echo of her fingers still in mine, the wine untouched on the table beside me. The music played on. When she returned, she wasn't holding her glass, just a mug of tea and a folded blanket. She sat down again, this time closer, not right next to me, but close enough that her leg nearly touched mine under the throw she spread across both of us. Tom always said you were like a brother to him, she said softly, staring straight ahead. I know, and that always made you feel like family to me. I know. She turned to me then, eyes searching. But you're not a boy anymore, and you're not my son. No, I said. I'm not. Another pause. Then she whispered it again. Different this time, heavier. You've grown up so fast. This time I didn't brush it off. I had to, I said. Some things make you grow faster than you want to. She nodded slowly, as if she understood too well. We didn't speak again that night. She finished her tea. I sat beside her in silence. When she stood to go to bed, she didn't say good night, just rested her hand on my shoulder for a moment. Firm, grounding, before walking down the hall and closing her door behind her. And still, I sat there in the quiet, staring into the dark, knowing that something had changed again. Not because of anything said, but because of everything that wasn't. I didn't sleep well that night. I wasn't tossing and turning exactly. I just stayed still, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house, the wind outside, the occasional groan of the pipes, and beneath it all, the memory of her voice. You've grown up so fast. It repeated in my mind like a phrase in a dream that doesn't fade, even when everything else does. In the morning, the house was quiet again. The smell of coffee returned like clockwork, and I followed it into the kitchen more out of instinct than hunger. She was already there, pouring herself a second cup, hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing a soft gray sweatshirt that slipped slightly off one shoulder. Her expression was calm, not guarded, but not quite open either. Morning, she said. Morning. She handed me a mug without asking. No questions. No small talk. We just stood there for a minute, sipping side by side in the silence. Then she said, "Want to take a walk?" I blinked. Now? She smiled faintly. It's early, but it's nice out. Cooler than yesterday. I hesitated, then nodded. Sure. We walked along the trail behind the neighborhood, the one that curved through the woods and eventually looped back behind the park. We didn't speak much at first, just the sound of our footsteps on dirt, the occasional chirp of birds, the distant rustle of leaves. It felt like we were walking through a memory neither of us had made yet. Eventually, she spoke. You ever think about how fast time moves? I looked over at her. All the time. She nodded slowly. I swear it was just yesterday I was driving you two to soccer practice. You used to leave your cleats in the back seat and it drove me crazy. I laughed softly. I remember. She smiled at that, but it faded quickly. And now, here we are. There was something in her voice. Nostalgic, yes, but also uncertain. A kind of sadness tucked beneath the edges. She stopped walking and turned to me. The morning light caught her face, softened the lines around her eyes, made her look both older and somehow younger at the same time. I meant what I said last night, she said. I met her eyes. I know. She took a slow breath. You're not a kid anymore. And I'm not blind. The honesty in her words knocked something loose in my chest. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She looked at me for a long time after that. Not the way someone looks at an old friend or a childhood memory, but like someone seeing you clearly for the first time. And then she said, quieter now, I don't know what that means, or what it's supposed to mean, but I feel it. And I know you do too. I do, I said. We stood like that in the stillness of the trail. Just two people surrounded by trees, birds, sunlight, and a quiet that felt impossibly loud. She sat on the edge of a nearby bench and folded her hands in her lap. Part of me feels like I shouldn't say any of this, that it's wrong, that it crosses some invisible line. But you are saying it, I said gently. She looked up at me. Because not saying it feels worse. I nodded, sitting beside her. Close but not touching. You're not alone in this, I said. I felt it too, since I walked through that door. She turned her face toward the trees, blinking slowly. Maybe it's just timing, she said. Maybe it's just this house, this weekend, the quiet. Maybe it'll pass. Do you want it to? I asked. She didn't answer right away. No, she said finally. But that doesn't make it less complicated. No, I echoed. It doesn't. We sat in silence again. The wind moved through the trees. A dog barked distantly in someone's backyard. The world went on like nothing had happened, while everything inside us had shifted. When we got back to the house, she didn't go inside right away. She stopped on the porch and turned to me. I don't know what's going to happen after this, she said. I stepped up beside her. Me neither. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. But I'm glad it happened. I smiled. So am I. She opened the door and walked inside. I followed. The space between us was different now, not because we had crossed a line, but because we'd acknowledged it was there. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. We didn't say anything more, but something had already begun. Quietly, carefully, something neither of us had expected, and neither of us wanted to let go.
Bye-bye.